and welcome to today's edition of Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Well, we're going to be talking about something today that everybody's talking about and nobody has the solution for, except perhaps my guest. This show is called Can War with Iran Be Won? And What About Our Other Enemies? We're focused on winning the war with Iran, but can such a war be won? By a treaty? By more bombs? By arming Iranians? Will Supreme Leader Khamenei and commanders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps ever agree to give up nuclear weapons? Why not? Today's guest, Kenneth Abramowitz, is the author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China-Russia Pandemics, and Racial Strife. He's also the founder of SaveTheWest.com, a website dedicated to saving Western civilization from itself. He says, America is fighting a major international war, yet the country does not really know it. Moreover, the war is being waged on a multitude of distinct fronts, both internal and external. The United States is wholly unprepared to fight a unified battle. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Abramowitz.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Let's see. Where would you, let's start with, do you think that the war with Iran can ever be won?
Yes.
Okay.
The question is, well, there's basically two choices. One is just keep the bombing campaign. That was the original plan. The original plan was to bomb for 38 days when it was stopped, plus another 2 or 3 weeks, President Trump publicly said. And that was the original plan until it was cut short after just shy of 40 days and moved to negotiations. So to answer your question, we could have won it if we kept bombing. The trouble is when you keep bombing, you don't know how long you have to keep bombing. And it's not like America has an infinite number of bombs, or Israel, infinite number of bombs, because it was like a joint venture between America and Israel. But theoretically, we could have kept bombing. The other choice is to negotiate, but you cannot negotiate with terror organizations. I mean, you can try, you can pretend, you can have intermediaries, but terror organizations never compromise. For example, I consider ourselves in World War III right now, but in World War II, our parents, grandparents, they didn't spend a lot of time negotiating with Hitler, which was a terrorist death cult, or the Japanese Imperial Army, which was a terrorist death cult. At that time, it was obvious to the world leaders that we had to fight to unconditional surrender. But that was that generation. Now we're in this generation. We don't have the patience of our parents and grandparents. So President Trump made the decision to pivot to negotiations, and that's where we are now. And that's plan B, so to speak.
Well, yes. I'm sorry.
But plan B, try as they may, will only kick the can down the road because the bad guys will never compromise. So it'll ultimately have to move to back to kinetic or military confrontation. So call it a zigzag. Military confrontation for 40 days, zigzag for 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever days it is, and then most likely zigzag back to military.
Yes, and of course, the danger in having these ceasefires is that in the meantime, Iran is resting and getting refueled and getting ready again to fight back. Of course,
that's because we made a mistake. First, you don't have ceasefires. There's no such thing as a ceasefire during a war. So we should have said to Iran, well, we're happy to talk whenever you want to talk, but it has nothing to do with the ceasefire. We're going to just keep bombing. That's what they should have said. Secondly, if the U.S. did move to a ceasefire, it has to be a ceasefire plus, and plus other conditions, like you can't resupply yourself through the Caspian Sea or through your train route to Pakistan or overland routes to Pakistan. We didn't put any stipulations. So when you don't do that, then they're feverishly rearming themselves during the ceasefire, which is pretty dysfunctional type of thing. So, but anyways, that's where we are.
So, I mean, of course, the main thing is that terrorists, it's not well, just one thing. I mean, I agree 100% you can't negotiate with terrorists because terrorists are not fighting a war for anything other than uh, pleasing Allah and being willing to die as martyrs for Allah. And so, it's like that's the thing. They don't care if they die. I mean, I don't think they want to die, but if that happens, then they're martyrs. And we don't have that same attitude. We don't want to die, and we don't want our soldiers to die or anybody to die. But so that's why it's like a not a fair fight, because they don't have anything to lose.
Yes, I call the Iranian government a pagan death cult. And I call Judeo-Christian culture a living cult.
Uh-huh.
And so if you go back into time, 3,800 years since the beginning of Judaism, before Judaism, everyone was a pagan.
Hmm.
And everyone, all pagans are death cults. They're particularly child death cults. They sacrifice children, but they'll sacrifice adults too, because the leader only cares about the leader. And if he has to sacrifice half of his population, just doesn't matter if that's what he has to do to win a war or whatnot. Then the Jews came around 3,800 years ago, the Ten Commandments 3,300 years ago, and the Christians 2,000 years ago, who adopted the Ten Commandments. And together, Judeo-Christian culture broke from the pagans and said, no, we don't want to be a death cult. We want to live and we want to enjoy life. And we want to live in some sort of a consensual government relationship rather than a dictatorship. And that propelled the last 2,000 or 3,300 years of Judeo-Christian culture. So we broke from the pagans, but the pagans didn't break from us. In other words, the pagans are still there. We thought we defeated the pagans 3,800 years ago, 3,300 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And so I call what's going on right now is the revenge of the pagans. The
I like
pagans said,
that.
you didn't defeat us. Uh, our death cult is going strong, and you, living cult, has become decadent, and you're self-absorbed. You only care about yourself. You're breaking even your own rules, and we're going to take over and bring back paganism throughout the world again. So to me, I tell people we're fighting World War III, but you also can say it's World War I. It's the never-ending battle between God and the pagans.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So okay, what do you think about now I just want to say that with just what's the word? Um Something oh, what's um not a corollary, but like anyway, an aside to you
Tangent,
can't what?
tangent.
No, like okay, I'll think of it.
Okay.
Um but it's true that you can't negotiate with terrorists, but I do want to give Trump credit for having negotiated with terrorists after October 7th in terms of getting the hostages back.
Yes, yes. You're exactly correct. He did negotiate with terrorists. Uh, he, they did compromise, so to speak. They were strong armed. What Trump did is he went to his friends in Qatar and Turkey, who are financing the Muslim Brotherhood, and I'll guess that he told them to tell Hamas, which is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, that they have to surrender the hostages. It's been going on for 2 years, and if they don't surrender the hostages, he's going to allow Israel to come in and kill every single Hamas member. And so they compromised in that example to save themselves, gave up the hostages. And so, yes, you're right. That was a compromise under duress, but he accomplished it by pressuring Qatar and Turkey, who then pressured Hamas.
Uh-huh. Of course, the number of people, prisoners, terrorist prisoners that Israel gave up to get the terrorists, there were a lot more terrorists per hostage than, you know what I'm saying? Like each hostage got, I don't know how many, 25 at least prisoners, terrorist prisoners released from Israeli jails. So,
Yes, that was the sad, what's one of the reasons why Hamas was willing to compromise, because if there were 250 or so hostages and 100 unfortunately died or were killed by the Hamas death cult, that left 150 that were free. And just to make the calculation easy, if it was 20 bad guys for each hostage, 20 times 150 is 3,000. So let's just, for,
mhm,
it's not the exact number, but pretend it is.
right.
So yes, Israel had to give up 3,000 bad guys in order to save 150 good guys.
Yes, yes. Of course, the Israeli families of the hostages were willing to do that. But and yes, and they needed Hamas, Gaza needed more soldiers, needed more fighters. So that was attractive to them. Um, what do you think about arming Iranians for them to take care of their own war?
Well, if you go, remember, we're at a fork in the road. So if you go the military route, well, first, the negotiating route is not going to work. It's only going to work if we surrender. It's not, we can't, you can't win a war with terrorists through negotiations. You're going to lose the war. Uh, and so I'm not a big fan of negotiating with terrorists. Now, if you go the military route, that's also a challenge. In other words, there's no easy choice here. But the military route, you have to bomb, bomb, bomb until they surrender. But you never know when that happens. And by the way, they never surrender. So you just have to keep killing, 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 killing. And then ultimately, you have to arm some of the minorities. Iran has around 92 million people, half of whom are Persian and half are minorities. So you'd have to, let's just say there's 10 minorities. You'd have to arm, you don't have to arm all 10 of them, but you'd have to arm two, three, four, five of them and basically start a civil war and one by one take over some of the 31 provinces and then ultimately take over the country. But that can take months, can take a year or two or three. And remember what I said about World War II and World War III, Americans don't have any patience. Our parents and grandparents' generation would have said, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Our generation says, uh, 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 think of it like a baseball game. Can't you like end it tonight? Like by 11, I have to go to sleep. I have to wake up and work tomorrow. Doesn't work
Uh-huh.
that way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Um, I'm just looking at the time. I know we're going to have to take a break soon, but let me ask you. Um, one of the things that has gotten my attention recently, I was just looking on, oh yes, it's 4 minutes to break. You know what? Why don't we take a break now so that we can start a new topic when we come back?
Okay.
Okay. My guest is Ken Abramowitz. We are talking today about can war with Iran be won, and what about our other enemies? We'll get to our other enemies too, but stay tuned. And welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carol Lieberman. We're talking today about the hot topic of the day, literally. Can war with Iran be won? And what about our other enemies? My guest is Ken Abramowitz. He is the author of a new book called The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. He's also the founder of SaveTheWest.com, a website that he has dedicated to saving Western civilization from itself. Um, I was just on Twitter earlier today, and there was a program, a video that going on between it was Alex Jones' show and Tucker Carlson was the guest. Now, I don't know what happened to these men. Um, Alex Jones, I mean, I know he's a bit of a maniac and all that, but he has said important things. He has dug up different evidence, and he has had his day. But he and Tucker Carlson, what is it? Carlson, um, he also, when he was on Fox, he did a great show. I was on his show, and both of them have gone over the edge. They are so anti-Israel. So seeing the two of them talk about this, and they were talking about how, what were they talking about? Um, they were blaming Israel for everything. And they were talking about how in America, some people who there are some people who blame Israel for the Iran war and blame Israel for everything, actually, and are trying to get us to stop the war, to stop fighting because Israel is fighting in Lebanon, trying to protect northern Israel from Lebanon terrorists, Hezbollah, and like it was like watching. It was like they were in another reality, blaming everything on Israel, and they put on some video clips from Levin, the television host, and he was talking about, saying about how Israel is just trying to defend itself and so on and so forth, and they were criticizing that. What is happening in this country with people who were once, who you once respected and who are now so anti-Israel and want the war to stop, not because I mean not because war is bad, but because it's not worth it to protect Israel. They think that the people who want to protect Israel, and I know that you are in a lot of organizations and so on that are helping Israel. And I went to Israel not long after October 7th to help people cope with terrorism, and I'm still helping people by Zoom from Israel. Um, how do you digest this? What do you think about this?
My standard line is this is racist, anti-Semitic nonsense. Qatar has financed a lot of these, what I call America alone isolationists. By the way, Republicans are roughly 75% America first, 25% America alone. President Trump is both an America first and America alone. He put together this coalition of these two. And since both of them wanted President Trump to win, there wasn't any infighting among Republicans. Now, a year or two later, there's infighting among Republicans. In the America alone, isolationist Republicans, financed by our outside enemies like Qatar, are fighting with the other 75% of Republicans that are America first. And so one of the reasons I wrote my book was to explain that World War III is unlike World War I and II, which were fought over there. World War III, to quote the Beatles, is here, there, and everywhere. So our foreign enemies have financed 25% of the Republican Party to basically become un-American, pretending that they're American, but they're un-American. And one of the ways that they manifest their theories, their nonsensical theories, is by blaming Israel for everything. So they would say, we're fighting in Iran to save Israel. No, we're fighting in Iran to save America. But they purposely slander Israel or throw it under the bus in order to create the illusion that a Christian country like America is fighting to save a Jewish country. And why doesn't a Jewish country protect itself? Why do they need help from the Christians? What they don't understand is that Jews and Christians have to work together. I call Jews and Christians Siamese twins. And if something happens bad to one of them, it's bad for the other.
Mm.
And Iran has promised to kill everyone in America and everyone in Israel. Why is that so difficult to believe? Death to America, it's their words. I didn't invent this stuff.
Yeah.
Death to America, death to Israel. So they purposely ignore the death to America
Yes.
and say it's the war is all about death to Israel. And America had to come in and fight a war to save Israel. That's unfair. So this is, as again, I said, this is racist, anti-Semitic nonsense analysis, and the ideas have been implanted in them by the either Iranian agents or a Muslim Brotherhood, which is Qatar, Turkey, and Pakistan agents who have paid them to basically become un-American.
Yes. You mean are you talking about the rhinos?
The no, I'm talking about the America alone. So the isolationists, the people who say, "Look, we have an ocean here and we have an ocean there, and I don't care what goes on around the world." Now, the reason they're saying that is they're being paid off by our foreign enemies to just like in World War II, the Germans were financing organizations which were America alone then. So America wouldn't join into World War II. So
Mhm.
that Germany could take over Europe and their ally Japan could take over the Far East. So you had voices at that time saying America should stay out of the war and isolationists. And those isolationists caused Pearl Harbor. They caused 60 million deaths in World War II. And so they pretended that they didn't have to fight World War II because they were paid off by the Germans, but then in effect got us into World War II because when the Germans and Japanese saw that we were clueless and not defending ourselves, they realized that they could declare war and get away with it. Well,
Mhm.
they didn't get away with it, but they thought they could. So similarly, Iran thinks they can get away with winning. And Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Qatar, Turkey, and Pakistan, that's the Sunnis. That's 85% of Muslims. Iran represents about 15% of Muslims, but both of them want to kill everyone in America, everyone in Europe. They want to kill all Christians, all Jews, and all Hindus, and all of which they call infidels. So
Right.
this war has been going on for 1,400 years. It didn't start a year ago. It didn't start on October 7th. It didn't start in 1949 when the Iran criminal organization took over. It's been going on for 1,400 years. And it's an endless war because we refuse to win it. And it's time to win it, not to keep kicking the can down the road and continuously to fight uh, endless wars. We
Mhm.
have the military might, and it's time to win. I just wrote an article on my Save the West website a week ago saying, Mr. President, we voted for victory, not endless war.
Mhm.
That sort of summarizes my feelings.
Yeah, I saw that on your website. Um, I mean, of course, I mean, the president doesn't want endless war either. He wants a peace prize, so he would like nothing better than there to be peace. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that he really. I mean, I'm not sure that he realizes how much this is about religion, how much this is about Islam, not about whatever other things you talk about in a treaty for a treaty. Um, so. But do you know what I mentioned specifically Tucker Carlson and and Alex Jones? Do you know? Have you heard that? Do you know what I'm talking about? Not
Yes,
necessarily this specific program, but like, have you heard both either of them talking about Israel?
I haven't listened to Alex Jones so much, but I've listened to
Yeah, Cutter Carlson.
yeah, on YouTube and elsewhere. And I used to subscribe to his.
Uh-huh,
As soon as he split from Fox, I
uh-huh.
subscribed. And then when I realized he was a total anti-Semite racist and he couldn't be reformed, I ended my subscription. But I do listen to some of his YouTubes or Facebook. I watch on Facebook, and I can see he's always blaming the Jews. By the way, people have been blaming Jews for 3,300 years. And the reason they blame Jews And the reason they hate Jews is that Jews brought forth to the world, aided by God on Mount Sinai, brought to the world the Ten
Yes.
Commandments. Now, in the 1,300 years later, 2,000 years ago, Jesus was Jewish. He accepted the Ten Commandments, and his followers, who then called themselves Christians, they believed in the Ten Commandments. Well, guess who didn't believe in the Ten Commandments? All the criminals in the world. And at that time, every country was run by a criminal organization. Every country was run by pagans. And they didn't believe in one God. They believed in multiple gods, or they believed in the moon or the sun or whatever they wanted to believe in.
Uh-huh.
So the pagans hated the Ten Commandments. They hated the Jews for, for bringing forth the Ten Commandments. Well, fast forward to today, we have 192 countries in the world. 90% are run by criminal organizations.
Mm.
So it's just like being back into pagan criminal times. They still hate the Jews for the Ten Commandments, not because Jews are evil, because Jews are good. They're
Well,
evil.
well, I think also why they hate the Jews is because, well, first of all, we call ourselves the chosen people, and nobody likes to. We shouldn't have advertised that so much, but also because Jewish families put a lot of emphasis on education, and so Jewish children, generally, for the most part, grow up to have uh, good careers and make a fair amount of money, and so there's a lot of envy.
Yes, and go back into the past. 3,300 years ago, how many people knew how to read and write? I read somewhere in some an internet story, 2% of the people knew how to read or write. Well, the Jews, uh, everyone knew how to read and write, particularly at that time, the males, because the women were supposed to focus on the family, and the males had the responsibility for the religion. And so, so let's just say 50% of Jews could read and write, and 2% of everybody else could read or write. So
Oh.
obviously by the way, anyone could have learned to read or write. The pagans or the other groups around could have said, "Oh, gee, 50% of the Jews read and write, and and the women read and write, but the men are focused on more on that, and the women, as I said, more on the families." They
Mhm.
could have adopted. They could say, I
Yeah.
think we should read and write." Uh, they could have, but they didn't. So then when the Jews started making more money, they said, "Oh, now I have another reason to hate the Jews.
That's
Number
right.
one, they believe in the rule of law. And number two, they make more money than I make. Now I hate them twice."
Yes, yes. What made you? Here's a good question. I usually start out with this, um, asking somebody, well, like if they wrote a book, well, like you wrote a book. Well, okay, yes. You didn't. I was just thinking about your website, but yes, your book. Um, The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. What made you write that book?
9/11.
Hmm.
I'm a professional business analyst in the healthcare field, so I analyze things. That's what I do. And I've been analyzing the healthcare field from the investment point of view for 50 years now. But 25 years ago, roughly, when 9/11 hit, I said to myself, what can I, as an individual citizen, do about this national security catastrophe? So I said to myself, well, I'm an analyst and I only have one skill in life, and that's to analyze. So I'm going to analyze 9/11. Who did it? Why'd they do it? Why didn't we stop them from doing it? How do we prevent them from doing it again? And what should we do? So I embarked on now a 25-year second career, simultaneous with my first career. The difference is my first career is a job. That's what I do for a living. In national security, everything I do is a public service. So I decided to devote now half of my time for public service. And I wrote about 10 years ago, I realized that America was at existential risk and didn't know it. Existential risk from our three enemies. I color code the reds, the greens, and the blues. The reds are the communists, China, Russia. Green are the Islamists, which we just discussed, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan on the Sunni side, and then around on the Shiite Muslim side, and then the blues, color coded blue for the United Nations color, the globalists. And so,
Uh-huh.
and after I realized that, I said, I have to write a book about this. I have to tell everybody. I have to
Uh-huh.
warn the people. I have to warn our government. I have to warn Christians in Europe. I have to warn Jews in Israel that we have to work together to save ourselves from the existential risk of the reds, the greens, the blues. So that's how I got to where I am today.
So the blues are the WEF.
World Economic Forum would be a global organization. I regard all global organizations as illegitimate because they're not elected. They're basically criminal organizations that were set up by some rich people, usually funded by the Reds and the Greens. So they're like, uh, they pretend to be international, but they're actually criminal organizations representing China, Russia, or, as we just discussed, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, or Iran.
Well, but wait, so it's interesting because so you're calling the Reds uh
Red's a traditional color for communists.
yeah,
It's China, Russia, Cuba, among others. They're
okay.
all dictatorships. They're all criminal
Well,
organizations.
because I mean I've been talking about this too, but like in a different way. The red, and I've been talking about I don't have any blue. Although I certainly agree that the World Economic Forum is a big danger. Um, But the red green alliance is, of course, the green of the terrorists, and the red are the socialist, communist, progressives. Thinking more about not so much Russia and China, although yes, you could certainly them too. I mean, that is where the communism and all that comes from. But I think about it in this country, like do you know what I'm saying? We agree on the green, that's the terrorists, and then the red, like in these days, where the progressives, um, socialist progressives, communists in America are also a big.
Yeah.
In other words,
Okay.
they aligned with each other. The progressives, the socialist communists are the reds, and the greens are the terrorists, and they have aligned with each other to destroy America. You wouldn't disagree with
Yes,
that.
but all of them are terrorists. The Reds, the
Well,
Greens, blues are all terrorists.
well,
But
yes,
but they
yes,
different flavors of terrorists.
right,
Right?
right.
So the Greens specialize in physical terror. In fact,
Hmm.
the Islamist terrorists would agree with the following sentence, which shows up again and again in terror literature. Christians, Jews, and Hindus will convert to Islam or we're going to kill them.
Right.
Iran would agree with that. Qatar, Turkey, and Qatar, they'd all agree with that. The question is now, how do you do it? And so, one way to do it is physically, right? You have an army. Another way to do it is cultural warfare. And
Hmm.
that's when you undermine the culture of America and try to replace it with your culture.
Hmm.
And so that's cultural warfare. It doesn't necessarily kill anybody, but it kills someone's brain or their ability to think. So, for example, the cancel culture is a mechanism to get you to stop thinking. Because as soon as you start thinking and say, oh, I have this idea, the cancel culture says, no, no, you can't have that idea.
Right.
So the reds, greens, and blues, the communists, Islamists, and globalists, all believe in cancel culture. They all hate when people think for themselves. They're all dictatorships. They're all criminal organizations. They're all unelected, and they're all trying to impose their ideology on their people. But they don't just impose ideology on their China, Russia people or their Iranian, Qatari people. They want to impose their dysfunctional culture on everybody.
Right.
So here we have a Judeo-Christian America and Judeo-Christian Israel, which function just fine, and they want to impose their dysfunctional culture on us because they cannot defeat us militarily, so they're trying to defeat us with a cultural war or
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
information war or a cancel culture war. There's many different names for it. And so, but they're all terrorists. They just use different forms of terrorism.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And then of course now in America there's accelerationism, where it doesn't matter who you hate. You can. I mean, it's the people who just want to destroy America, and they have various things, people, kinds of people that they hate, um, whether it's rich people or white people, or you can hate a lot of different people, and they're kind of going into one group now, the accelerationists, and trying to take over America. It's not just, yes, they're terrorists, but in fact, they're the ones who wanted to take over the UFC the UFC fight fight bout. Um,
Right,
you know about the terrorist plot that they had to take over that, and it was
right,
so interesting how even though they really weren't so far, none of the people have been identified as like radical Islamist terrorists. However, they had to have studied radical Islamist terrorists because they used the type of war. Their plans for what they were going to do are taken from the radical Islamist playbook. The idea of dropping drones with bombs and then getting everybody to run out of the south lawn and go in a particular direction that they would guide you to, and then there were going to be people with rifles to shoot, sharpshooters to shoot all the people coming out to try to run away, and then of course they were going to go into the White House. So these are typical terrorist plans, and it's a good thing that it's a good thing that one mother of one of them called the police and stopped it just 3 days. I mean, it was on the 10th and it was supposed to happen on the 14th. Barely stopped this whole plan that would have happened on June 14th. Well, we need to take another break. So, again, my guest is Ken Abramowitz. We're going to be talking about today's show is called Can War with Iran Be Won? And What About Our Other Enemies? And we will be right back. And welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carol Lieberman. We're talking today about Can War with Iran Be Won? And what about our other enemies? My guest is Ken Abramowitz. He is the author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. And he's the founder of SaveTheWest.com website. It's interesting. You were talking about how 9/11. I was asking you what made you write that book and do the website and so on. And your story about 9/11 is similar to mine in that when 9/11 happened, well, first of all, I'm a born and bred New Yorker, and I was living here at the time of 9/11, but my heart is still was and still is in New York. So that, got my attention. And I just had this feeling. It was like a kind of a surreal sort of feeling. I didn't know anything about terrorism at the time. And I just had this sense like something came over me. And I felt that terrorism was going to be radical Islamic terrorism, is what I'm talking about, is going to be the biggest threat to our lives. And of course, that is what has happened. And so I quickly went to conferences and read books and studied about terrorism. And um, and that made me that I starting then I have devoted a significant part of my time, just like you have in this way. I've devoted a significant part of my time to helping people cope with terrorism and writing two books about terrorism. I host the Terrorist Therapist podcast. I've been doing that for, I don't know, maybe coming on 10 years. Yeah. Um, but it's not just about helping people. The podcast isn't just about helping people cope. It's about warning people about terrorism. And, so it's been very frustrating for me, and I'm sure I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. Um, that all this time saying all these things that I do every anniversary of 9/11 for the past 5 years or so, I've made videos, music videos, and I have them go around Manhattan, and I had to go around DC also, with these videos about how dangerous, terrorism is, like what the real threat is, and so on. And so it is so frustrating that not that, uh, I don't know how many people I've reached, but people in, like what you said, I think at the beginning, that people in America are just so oblivious to what danger they're in. So, so that's my story. And we need more people like us to try to make people wake up and understand, and including voting for people, not just in terms of the president. Trump is the best president as far as, well, as far as a lot of things, but as far as protecting Israel and as far as fighting terrorism. Um, but but not just presidents, also your mayor, your dog catcher, all the people at the local level, because that's where people are getting into government, who are basically who are terrorist supporters, radical Islamist terrorist supporters. And that's the thing that people need to be careful about or need to pay attention to. I'll give it over to you.
Yes. So where does a 40-year-old uh, like a Mamdani get his thoughts? Well, they start a lot earlier than 40 years old, okay? So when you miseducate a 6-year-old for 12 years, you get an 18-year-old miseducated adult.
Right.
And then you send them to some miseducation university, and now you have a 22-year-old miseducated adult. And then you let them vote, or others just pick up bombs or guns and start shooting, and you end up having a dysfunctional society. So the point I'm getting to is we've lost control over our K through 12 schools, our teachers' colleges, and our universities, and they've been taken over by the reds, the greens, and the blues. In other words, the false narratives of the reds, the communist dictatorship, Islamic dictatorship, and global dictatorships are all false narratives. They're all unelected, and they've all miseducated the youth to think that what they're offering is good for the kids. And some of whom will then vote for Mamdani, who's a professional fraud. He's an imposter. He's a citizen for 7 years, but he lied on his application. Not that
So
I've seen
so
it
why
lying.
Okay, so why or are there people, like, I keep waiting for somebody to do something to throw him over or deport him or something. And there was talk about that, his having lied. Do you know, are people working on that to get rid of him?
Well, the reason I say he lied is not that I saw his application. It's just that he's a member of the Iranian 12er death cult. That's the people who are running around right now believe the 12th imam is hidden and will come about if we have total chaos in the world. The imam, or the Messiah, or Mahdi, as they call him, will come back and save Muslims and kill all the Christians, Jews, and Hindus. So this is a Looney Tune um, ideology. I call it a pagan ideology. They need people. They need a million people like you to re-educate these lunatics. But Mamdani is one of them. So if he 7 years ago, when he applied to be an American citizen, if he had told the immigration officer, "I'm a member of the Iranian Shiite Muslim 12er fanatical death cult. I want to come to America. kill all the Christians, Jews, and Hindus and have Muslims take over. And then that'll encourage the Mahdi to come out who's hidden. He died 1,000 years ago, will come back and I want to be an American citizen. They would have said, buddy, you're deported, okay? We're sending to JFK, have a nice day.
Right.
So Mamdani should have been arrested long ago, should have been deported long ago, should have never been allowed to run for mayor. But because we miseducated the kids, now there's enough kids or
Yeah.
foreigners. And also bear in mind, in New York, they don't check IDs. So we don't even know if he was elected. They don't check, they don't
Uh-huh.
check citizenship ID. They don't check name ID. So that's why I say we can't allow people like this to run. And now it'll encourage tens and hundreds and thousands of other death cult members to run. Also, we don't run national security clearances on public officials. We, if we did, we'd find out that he was a foreign agent. He's representing Iran. He's not representing America or we the people or Judeo-Christian
Uh-huh.
culture. So the point I'm getting to is before you get physical terrorism, you get cultural terrorism. And if you don't stop cultural terrorism, you get physical terrorism. So I'm a proponent of stopping cultural terrorism so you don't get Looney Tunes, who some of whom get guns and some of whom just get ballots in the voting booth to create chaos in society.
Yes. I am still in shock that Mamdani supposedly won. I mean, yes, I think there probably was an election fraud, but I mean, I keep thinking I keep hoping that there are people in New York, or in the government, federal government, who are digging into these things because to try to get him out because this is so, and there's something, there was just some news today about, oh well, yeah, about people who he's supporting. I mean, that's the thing. You get you get one bad apple, and they support lots of other bad apples getting elected, and that's what's happening. I mean, it's really getting. I don't want to say it's getting to the tipping point because I don't think it's that far yet, but it's getting too far. That people, bad apples, are getting in, and they're bringing others with them.
Yeah, well, you're getting to the crux of the problem. Our FBI and DOJ look for physical terrorists. So if you blow something up, you shoot somebody, they find you, indict you, and whatnot. But what if you just have a bad idea? What if, for example, some imam in some mosque says, what the line I just mentioned to you, Christians, Jews, and Hindus should convert to Islam, or we're going to kill them. The FBI is not arresting that guy.
Hmm.
They say, oh, freedom of speech. So
Right,
one of my arguments is I don't think that incitement to genocide should be covered by freedom of speech.
right,
I think
right.
when someone calls for the death of everybody, they should be locked up, even though they didn't kill anybody. And so the FBI, if I were running the FBI or the federal government, I would redirect the FBI to not focus not just on physical terror, but also to focus on cultural terror.
Yes.
And my model is Nazi Germany. Hitler got elected in like 1932, 33 as a minority government, then took over the government, and he ran on a platform of anti-Semitism, which I call cultural terrorism or incitement to genocide. But he
Mhm.
didn't kill anybody till the very late 30s. And then in the late 30s, he converted from cultural terror to physical terror, and then which then led to the Holocaust around 1940 and led to the death of 6 million Jews. Now, it also led to the death of 54 million Christians, because together 60 million people were killed in World War II. So
Uh-huh.
the point I'm getting to is if societies, whether it was the British or the Germans or Americans helping, if we had stopped Hitler in the 1930s, mid 30s, late 30s, we wouldn't have had to go through the physical trauma of World War II, but we didn't.
Mhm.
We didn't do anything until Pearl Harbor. And then we had to focus on physical terror. I don't want a repeat of that. I don't want to make the same mistake that our parents and grandparents made.
Well, yes, and in Europe, cultural terrorism has taken over all of Europe at this point. France, the UK, Germany, Belgium, they came. They're here. They came and are still coming, taking over all the money. The social services, taking over. Not trying to assimilate at all. And trying to instill their culture. And so the same thing really is happening in New York, where Muslims are standing. It's just what's happening in Europe is happening. It's already happening in New York. You don't hear about any of this on the mainstream media, but like in New York, where Muslims are saying their prayers in the middle of the street. Bowing in the middle of the street, not allowing any cars to come and all that. And of course, the call to prayer running, raining from mosques. I mean, whoever would have thought that after 9/11 that there would be first of all a terrorist mayor, and second of all there would be all of this predominance, this takeover by Muslims. Not to say, I always, on my podcast, I always am careful to say not all terrorists are Muslims and not all Muslims are terrorists. However,
Right. Well, look, we basically didn't learn the lesson of 9/11. We learned some lesson from 9/11, namely that physical terror is bad. But we didn't learn the lesson that physical terror is preceded by 10, 15, 20 years of cultural terror,
yes.
which then leads to physical terror. So we should have banned the Muslim Brotherhood. We should have closed all the mosques in the country. We should have closed all Muslim schools, and we didn't. We didn't attack the cultural terror, we attacked the physical terror.
Uh-huh.
And that was the number one mistake made. We didn't learn the lesson of 9/11. And that's why I do what I do for 25 years, because I learned the lesson of 9/11.
Uh-huh.
Society didn't. So I'm trying to communicate to the society that they can't keep making mistakes like this, or it will become Judeo-Christian culture will be dead in America, will be taken over by the Muslims, who I call pagans, and we'll go back to what life was like before 2,000 years before
Mhm.
Christianity, 3,800 years before
With the golden calf.
Christian. That's right. That's right. It's back to the golden calf of 3,300 years ago. It's just the golden calf of the Muslim pagan, or the communist pagans, or the globalist pagans. But it's that's what I said in the very beginning. It's revenge of the pagans. So I've seen this play before, and I don't want to see it again.
I like that. Well, let me again give out the name of your book, The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam. And yes, that's so important. Well, okay, let me from political Islam, China, Russia, pandemics, and racial strife. You kind of cover it all. And founder of SaveTheWest.com. So check out SaveTheWest.com. And I admire you for all this work that you've been doing, and wish you good luck